It shouldn't be this hard on this side. You know, this should be happy, this should be light, this should be having me ready to run. And I found myself almost dragging my feet, being very slow. Neither one of us was getting what we deserved out of the relationship at that time. It was just this toxic cycle of petty arguments and then forgiving and then doing it again. And you can only put so much under a rug before you trip.
Yeah.
Because the facade's gonna fade at some point.
So today we are going to be discussing Marche, how she got engaged to her college sweetheart, broke off her engagement, and ultimately chose herself. And that is a very difficult thing to do, to get engaged, break it off. I feel like a lot of women are raised to aspire to marriage.
Yeah.
And so to finally get that and to call it off is a big deal. And I just want to learn more about your experience and you and the kind of person that you are to have made that decision for yourself. So, who were you when you got engaged at 24?
So the version of myself I was at 24 was a more timid version of who is sitting with you today. And funny enough, I just realized that I had this exact same hair color at 24. So there's some circling going back, but that Marche was so committed to sticking to the plan, being on the right path and like kind of checking things off. And a lot of who I was wrapped up in that relationship. So that version of me wanted that path and wanted my plan so bad that I was willing to ignore anything that was gonna distract me from that. So I wasn't quite ready to risk it all and go for it, but that version of me did the best she could with what she had.
And when did you start dating that person? At what age?
We were 20. I was 20. He's older than me.
Okay, so you were together for 4 years before you broke off the engagement. Okay. So how did it feel to get engaged to your college sweetheart?
So I had always thought it would feel like a dream, like in the movies, like you'd feel so happy that the only people that mattered in the room were you two. And my heart kind of breaks for that version of me because it wasn't quite what I dreamt it would be. I felt like I was experiencing it two different moments simultaneously. So of course I was ecstatic. It was my 24th birthday, which finally fell on Friday the 13th. And all the people I loved were there, and the ring was absolutely beautiful. I always say the ring was me in ring form. It was not quiet. It was very bold. It drew a lot of attention. So obviously I was excited, but I also knew that we had a lot going on behind the scenes. There was a lot of discussion about boundaries being crossed and blending our families and also becoming an instant family. So the moment also felt incredibly heavy for me.
And at what point did you begin to feel like the relationship was not gonna work and you needed to call off the engagement?
I would like to say probably toward the end of our 1-year engagement. A pivotal moment for me. My family always takes a summer vacation. I'm incredibly close to my family. So we were on a family vacation for Christmas, and he was along with us. And every day I was dreading going back to our room because I knew a disagreement of some sort was waiting for me because our camouflage of presenting this perfect couple was starting to crack. And so I just started to deal with that question that was circling in the back of my brain. I knew that I didn't want to go into a marriage feeling how I felt. And I also felt like it shouldn't be this hard on this side. You know, this should be happy, this should be light, this should be having me ready to run. And I found myself almost dragging my feet, being very slow. Neither one of us was getting what we deserved out of the relationship at that time. It was just this toxic cycle of petty arguments and then forgiving and then doing it again. And you can only put so much under a rug before you trip.
Yeah.
Because the facade's gonna fade at some point. And I always say nothing clears your vision quite like the idea of being with someone forever. So that was a pivotal moment when I was like, okay, it's time to start dealing with that thought. And there was only a few people in my life who knew what I was actually going through, and they made their positions very clear. But I was adamant that this was my journey to walk, and I had to get there on my own. So it was definitely a process within my own head, and I needed to be honest with myself about how I felt. I just didn't want to believe that this was how things were unfolding.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I had finally got everything I wanted, and it didn't feel anything like I thought it was supposed to.
Yeah. I find it interesting that you acknowledged that neither of you was getting what you deserved out of the relationship, which sounds to me like you taking some sort of accountability.
Yeah, for
for
sure.
like how the relationship turned out. What would you have done differently?
I probably would have been more open up front about what I was grappling with and communicating that in a different way. Which I've done a lot of work to accept that version of myself, but when you speak out of pain, your message sometimes gets lost. Like a lot of couples will, I think, forget to acknowledge that if you're arguing about petty stuff, there's some big issues that are being ignored because that stuff is hard to talk about. And despite what you're going through with somebody, you still care about them. So I think I would have definitely communicate how I was feeling a lot better.
Okay. So what about the relationship didn't work for you? When you say you were grappling with huge issues behind the scenes, what was that?
So something I think that is not talked about enough is that when someone crosses your boundary, you do not have to necessarily forgive and forget and move on. A boundary of mine that I did communicate was crossed, and I wasn't willing to get over that. And I think if we're being honest with ourselves, something that just doesn't sit right with you as a person, no matter how much time has passed, no matter how much love is there, you're not gonna be okay with it. Whether it's 10 years down the line, 10 months down the line, if it's something that is truly against who you are, you're still gonna be upset. And I just knew I didn't wanna look back and think, well, you knew. And something at the time my best friend said to me was, if you just know in 5 years you chose this life. And that was like a gut punch, because I was like, whoa, she's right. I would have no one to blame but myself if I was to ever get down the line and think I should have made a different choice. Because at the end of the day, I knew that was a hard boundary for me.
Yeah.
And it was crossed. And you can forgive, but it doesn't mean you have to stay.
Yeah, that is so interesting, because I said those same exact words to one of my best friends when her partner cheated on her while they were together and she was getting back with him, and I'm so happy she's not with him anymore. But I said to her, like, if I will support you in whatever you do because you're my best friend, but just know that this is the life that you've chosen, and it's probably going to happen again if it's already happening before you get married. It's just so important, I think, for everyone to accept that when someone does something, crosses their boundary, don't expect that it's never going to happen again because it happened, and own your decision if that's what you're choosing to accept.
And then to have a real conversation with yourself. Like you said, if it happens again, are you willing to forgive it again? Because I think each time that line keeps moving back, and I do believe you have to kind of treat people how to treat you.
Yes.
And so my older sister is always like my voice of reason, and she kind of said the same thing, like, I love you, and I'm gonna go right if we're going right, but I wouldn't be your sister if I didn't tell you how I really felt.
Yeah, like in front of everyone, I'm gonna smile and I'm gonna be your bridesmaid and I'm gonna be down for you, but behind the scenes, you will know that I cannot stand the person's guts.
Exactly.
Yeah. So tell us about calling off the engagement and ending that relationship. What did that feel like?
It felt like I was breaking multiple hearts at once, mine included. I had no idea what I was doing. I had actually never broken up with anybody either. So that was also the first.
Had you been broken up with?
Yes, but I had never been the one that was like, this isn't gonna work.
Yeah, are you one of those people who prefers to be broken up with than to break up with someone?
After doing it, maybe, because it is, like you said, you have to stand on business, because rightfully so, that person is gonna fight back. They're gonna show that they don't want this, that they care, and it is heartbreaking, almost like breaking your own heart to be like, I'm sticking to my morals. So yeah, it was incredibly confusing and painful. I was also grappling with, my ex-fiance had a son from a previous relationship, and we had obviously grown very close. So I was grappling with the fact that my position in his life was also changing, borderline disappearing. But at the same time, I knew that I had to do what was best for me by any means necessary, even if that was incredibly hard and incredibly painful. There were so many pieces and so many questions that I didn't have the answer to. The one answer I did know was, I got to do what's best for Marche. Even at the expense of everyone else I'm hurting. Who do I rather? I could please everyone else, and then when you're left alone, be completely upset and empty that I didn't listen to myself. So it was completely confusing. I also had never seen any woman get engaged and then not get married. I was searching high and low for a roadmap, especially like you said, we're taught like, you do this and you look for a husband and you get married. And I'm like, okay, this is what's next. But like, did anyone else not want this? Did anyone say no? And I had to kind of carve that path myself.
Yeah. I think we don't talk about it enough.
No,
because
not
I
at all.
do have 2 friends now who have called off their engagements. And I think it's so brave. Yeah. It's the bravest thing. It's almost easier. I think it was Kim Kardashian who said, like, with her 72-day marriage, that she knew it wasn't going to work, but there was so much on the line. You'd started planning. It's almost easier to just have it and then, get divorced later when everyone's forgotten about it or something. Not to say that divorce is easy, but basically it's a very difficult thing to do, and there are not enough women who have shared that story.
And I think there's a lot of embarrassment around it. That's why those conversations aren't happening. Not like you said, not saying that divorce is easier, but there's so much spotlight during that phase. Like you said, after the wedding, people are like, okay, we've celebrated them, back to our lives, and you can kind of deal with that. But when you're engaged, everyone's asking, when's the wedding? Did you pick a date? Did you find a venue? Did you do this? Meanwhile, I'm still trying to wrap my head around what I'm actually doing next.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's a conversation that needs to be had.
Were you embarrassed?
Yeah, embarrassment was a big feeling. Yeah. I felt like I had failed.
Why?
Because like I said, again, you get engaged, you get married. So I went to school, I got the degree, I got the man, I got the ring. Next was like the house, the kids. And I was stuck in this one space, and we had a very public relationship like in our community back home. So I felt like all eyes were on me about what was next. And they tell you life happens in phases. So I was definitely in my engagement phase. I was actually one of the first to get engaged, and then there were like 3 that followed. So in the midst of all these women that are in the happiest moments of their life, I'm kind of in limbo. And so I felt like turning that down made me a failure. Because again, I had no example. Even, you kind of think of our moms as like having all the answers. Even my mom was like, I've never been where you are. So I don't necessarily know how to guide you. It was really like a me with me kind of conversation.
Yeah. So if we sit with that feeling of embarrassment that you felt, was it because people like looked up to you and your relationship, and then you felt like you were letting people down? Because I understand the failure aspect, like, feeling like you failed in something. But what was that? What makes you, in that scenario, in that situation, what makes you embarrassed?
That version of me cared a lot about what people thought. And something later on a therapist told me was, and she was like, this is gonna sound harsh, but no one cares as much as you think they do.
Facts.
So I have said that to people who have come to me for advice, because I wish I would have heard that in the gut of it. Because I think the embarrassment was more so, oh my God, what are people gonna say? Oh my God, everyone who looks up to me is gonna be like, wait, what? What happened? You guys were perfect. Like, she must be crazy. Like I said, the ring was beautiful. I'm never gonna take away from that. People are like, what? She's gonna give that up? Because you don't see that. We see in society, like, you get, almost like, especially as Black women, when you have it, take it. Don't think that, oh, but if I go to the next door, it might be. And I think, I cared so much about what everyone else was thinking. And in reality, nobody cares as much as you think they do.
Yeah. Did you give the ring back?
I did. That would be a different segment.
One thing that I hear a lot when it comes to like women calling off relationships, especially when the man is perceived as a good man, is like, oh, but you know, you're probably not gonna get this again. You know, everyone does whatever he did. Like all men are trash. All men are da-da-da. Like kind of like operating from fear, from a scarcity mentality. Like just take what you have, you know, like he's not beating you or whatever it is. So just take it. Did people tell you that?
For sure. On paper, perfect. And I would always tell people the aesthetic of our relationship was everything I could have wanted. But nobody talks about when the picture might not feel exactly like you thought it would. And like you said, we are taught, especially depending on, we're around the same age, so the people who raised us have this very like you said, if he's not beating on you and he can provide, why are you walking away? Like, get over it, stuff that. And I'm like, today we're just not. I can't sacrifice my mental health and my peace for the sake of the ring, the house, the future, because at the time, I was also allowed the freedom to choose, right? So at any second, that freedom can be taken away. If you have a house with someone, that's a whole different conversation. If you have kids, that's a completely, we hear all the time about how people stay for the sake of their children. And we didn't have anything tying in that way. So I knew there was privilege in having the space to decide. But for sure, on paper and the aesthetic of our relationship and our story, my parents are high school sweethearts. So I always kind of wanted to have the same kind of story. And so college sweetheart, I was like, falls in the same category. So on paper, it was perfect. Just everything else wasn't.
Yeah. If that like scarcity or fear, if it actually was to manifest as the truth, right? If after leaving that person, you were then single forever or you never got married again, would you still have left? Does that question make sense?
Like if I could see the future and...
If you could see the future and see that you never found someone you preferred, you never ended up with anyone else, so you were single. So if the options were like, be with him, whatever he did, forgive it, or be single forever, which one would you choose?
If I'm speaking as the woman that's sitting here with you today, I'm still gonna stand on business.
I love that.
Because it gave, as soon as I picked myself, my world cracked open. And we don't spend enough time in gratitude, but now in my later 20s, I definitely spend a lot more time with gratitude, because when I look back on everything, that's the best way to describe it. I picked myself and the world cracked open. I was finding myself, opportunities were coming to me, relationships, I got to travel. I can remember like praying for the time when I could do that. And right on the other side, I was like booking trips left and right. And it was on a trip that I was like, this is I'm exactly where I wanted to be. And it was that one thing I needed to do. So sometimes choosing yourself, and you don't know what's on the other side. None of us do. So I might very well be the fabulous, rich, single auntie, but I'm doing the best I can with what I got. And at the time, settling wasn't gonna be the option.
Do you think that when you meet your person, do you think that you could love them without, without holding back because you've been hurt before?
I think that is going to be, so I think the next part of my healing journey does have to happen in a relationship, because I think that is the last test, for lack of better words, because there's no, to say you don't get hurt in love would be wrong. Even if it's not intentional, that's inevitable, right? So I would want to love my person that way. I'd want to bring down all the walls, but that also means I'm incredibly exposed. And I've always said I cannot survive heartbreak like that again, nor will I put myself up, but to love you have to. So I think that would be my next part of the journey, because I would need an incredibly patient, so let's add that to the non-negotiable, an incredibly patient man, because it would take time to bring down all the walls and be completely vulnerable.
Yeah, I hope you find someone really beautiful or meet someone really beautiful, because I do agree that after you've done so much work on yourself, it gets to a point where it's like no, I'm not perfect, but I'm good, and the rest of my healing needs to happen in that partnership. And I don't know, from speaking to you, I feel like when you meet the right person, I don't think that they're going to have to do all this work to
Yeah.
break all these walls. I think you think that, but I think that you will be, like, as long as you're anxious attachment style, I was as well, like, anxious avoidant. If you meet someone who is secure, I think they will love you into being secure.
Yeah, I definitely have read that anxious and avoidant people, I think all the walls would come down for a secure person.
Yeah, I think so.
And I'm naturally just such a care bear. So you're right. I probably will do it and not even not even realize all the walls have come down.
Yeah, because it should be easy. It shouldn't be as difficult. Obviously, everything beautiful is hard. Beautiful friendships are hard. So it's the hard part is like getting to know the other person, making sure that the things you do honor them. It's not like, the hard part is not like, oh, this person did this horrible thing to me and now I have to forgive. What question do you wish people would ask you more often?
If I had to pick one, I wish people asked me why I wear color so much.
What is the answer to that?
That's my way of keeping my inner child happy. I think I've always wanted to be that person, looking back at my childhood. But again, when you're a child, other people are kind of navigating that experience for you. And I think little Marche always wanted to be super bright, bubbly, in these really extravagant patterns, colors. And so that is me keeping my inner child happy and making sure she's heard.
And making sure she's heard. Yeah. I love that. Do you think that that's probably what draws you to Kai?
Yes. Yes, because the colors just scream, I'm the main character.
Yeah.
You can't put a Kai piece on and not think you're the main character.
Yeah. Do you enjoy being the main character in a room?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's you. I feel like some people, you just, there's nothing, even if we put you in all black right now, like look at your hair, look at your face, you're still going to be the main character. Finally, describe the future you hope for.
The future I hope for is balanced, full of color, fun experiences, and continuing to live out my dreams, however that continues to unfold. But it's full of that in the future.
What are your deepest dreams and desires?
Ooh, deepest dreams and desires? If we're gonna go big, I would love to own a business that supports other women wearing color in a massive way. I don't know if that means clothes, I don't know if that's a festival, but I wanna share the things that I love and encourage other people to do that. So if it's wearing your natural hair, if it's wearing color, if it's just owning who you are, something in a very massive way. My deepest dreams are all massive.
I love that. And you're going to do it. You're absolutely going to do it. Like, if there's anyone that's going to do that kind of thing, it's going to be you. You are the type of woman that breaks boundaries.
Thank you.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
People can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Marche's Mirror. And tag along for my colorful journey and navigating my new life in London and a few peeks into my dating life, if that so happens. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
It's so
having
lovely
me.
to speak to you.